Hi, I'm Raj, and if you haven't been to my channel, it's great to see you here. If you've been trying to build and sell software as a service apps, you might have come across Stripe payment links. It's probably the quickest and easiest way to set up Stripe and collect payments, and I have seen quite a few interesting content about how to set up payment links for one-time payments, but the content that I've seen for recurrent payments or subscriptions was not so great. So in this content, that's what we're going to do. First, we're going to understand what happens behind the scenes when you pay using payment links, and then we will use our understanding to build our code base using Next.js, recurrent payment links, and Stripe webhooks. This content is sponsored by our new app called AI Cal Chat. AI Cal Chat is a chat-based AI-powered scheduling tool that runs on your Google Calendar. Imagine you can talk to your calendar like you could talk to a friend and ask for details. You can create, display, and update your meetings through a simple chat interface. And not only that, you can create meetings with multiple people based on their availability. We also have a custom Google domain feature that works for all the people under one domain. The app is in test phase right now, so the first 100 users who want to test our app would have access to 250k free tokens. It would be massively appreciated if you could take the app for a test ride and drop your feedback on our Discord link. At the time you create a payment link, first you'll be asked to create a product and a price attached to it. This will create a product object and a price object connected to this payment link. And you will need your price ID or product ID to identify your product or price later in your Stripe events. And during the product and price creation, you have two options to choose from. The first option is called one-time payment, and the next one is called recurrent payment. And recurrent payments are used for subscriptions. Let's take one-time payment as a simple example. From the time the user enters the checkout page until the checkout session is completed, Stripe does a series of operations. And once the operations are done, it also fires an event for each operation. And we could technically subscribe to all these events in our Next.js app. And based on these events, we could update our database or user state. But for one-time payment links, you typically only care about last event called the checkout session completed event. For the recurrent payments, you can't just really check once to see if the user is paid, but Stripe also has to charge the user every billing cycle. So that means all the events that we care about will be fired every billing cycle, and we need to handle them accordingly. When the user subscribes for the first time, we have a series of operations happening, and also events fired for all those operations. You can see the operations start from customer being created and an invoice being generated, followed by a subscription created for the customer. And then Stripe attempts to charge the invoice, and once payment is completed, Stripe updates the subscription to be active based on the invoice status. And once every billing cycle, Stripe starts by creating an invoice and attempts to charge that invoice. And if the invoice is paid, then the subscription is also updated. And we also fire all the events connected to these operations that we subscribe to in our Next.js app. These events might reach our webhook API endpoints in different orders. All right, now that you understand all the events that are fired when you pay using your payment links, the question is, what are the events that you should actually care about? If you take a look at Stripe's official subscriptions webhook events documentation, they explicitly tell you to use invoice paid events along with subscription status in order to give users access to our products. That means the official recommendation from the Stripe is for us to track both the invoice status and the subscription status. We can track the subscription status in subscription created, then subscription updated, and subscription deleted events. And we can set our invoice status to be paid or unpaid when we receive invoice paid or invoice payment failed events respectively. These events can be translated into user actions in our app. For example, when a user creates a subscription and pays for it, Stripe fires subscription created event, and it fires deleted event when subscription is deleted by the admin. And for cases where a user cancels, renews, and upgrades a subscription, Stripe fires a subscription updated event, and when invoice is paid or unpaid, Stripe fires invoice paid or invoice payment failed events. At the time we build our code base, we have access to two statuses. And I think it's a bit too much. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine them both into one status called app subscription status. And we will learn shortly how to build this into our code base. Our app subscription status will only have 4 different values. The first is active. This is if both the subscription status is active and invoice status is paid. The next one is canceling. This is when the user has canceled the subscription, but it remains active until the end of the period. For this, we will also use another field to keep track of the next invoice date. And then I have a pending payment value if the subscription is active, but the invoice payment fails. In this case, Stripe might attempt to pay the invoice again for a few times before it changes the status of the subscription. But in our app, we already start tracking it as soon as the payment fails. Then for every other subscription status that is not active, I mark them as inactive. Now that you understand all the events that are fired when you pay using a recurrent payment link, and also the events that you care about, it's time to bring this to life in code. The app that we set up is a simple Next.js app with a Postgres database and Drizzle ORM that has a homepage with a table information containing all our users. And we have a schema that contains 2 tables. The first one is the subscribed users table that keeps track of ID, email, subscription type, subscription status, invoice status, current plans that the user is on. And then we have a value for next invoice date. The next table is to keep track of all the Stripe events and the event payload we receive from the Stripe, and this will enable us to easily debug things later. Based on these 2 statuses, we've also built our app subscription status inside our page.tsx file. It's basically the exact same logic we talked about in the last section. Now, I'm going to run this app and see if this works. All right, it works great. Now we have a link to another page here called Subscribe Now, and this is where we will add our payment links. So we have a simple component called subscription pricing that has 2 plans for basic and pro. And this contains a button that will take us to Stripe payment links. We've not created the payment links and we will do it shortly. Now let's make a simple post API route, which will be used as a webhook for Stripe events later. For that, I'm going to install Stripe library. And once done, I'm going to come back to my route and create a Stripe instance using Stripe secret key on the top. And inside the post handler, we're going to have a function called construct Stripe event. And I'm going to pass a request object. And I'm going to create another file called helpers.ts and create the construct Stripe event function there and export the same. This function gets the request body and the signature headers and uses a Stripe library to construct the event using a webhook secret, which we will shortly get from Stripe dashboard, and return the event. If something goes wrong, we create a next error response and return the same. And in the post handler, we will subscribe to this event and print the event type and return a response for the webhook and acknowledge the fact that the event is successfully received. Now it's time for us to serve our app. Since we're going to add our webhook to a Stripe as an endpoint, we're going to serve it as a publicly available endpoint. For that, I'm going to install and use ngrok. It's a simple proxy service. I've already installed it using Homebrew. And once done, you just have to log into ngrok dashboard to get your auth keys and add them. And once done, you can simply serve your app using ngrok http localhost 3000. And in my .env file, I'm going to create all the fields that I need. I need the Stripe keys, the webhook secret, and the price ID that I use for my subscription plans. Now we have everything set up on our side. It's time for us to create our payment links. We will go to the Stripe dashboard, switch on test mode, then click on New Payment Links and add a product and a price and choose Recurring and create a new payment link for our subscriber basic. We will also copy the price ID and paste it in our app. And at the same time, we will copy the Stripe secret key as well. We will do the same for Subscriber Pro. And also copy the price ID and paste it inside our env variable. Now we will copy both the payment links and add them to our app. And once done, we should be able to open the Stripe portal from our web app. Now I'm going to create a subscription and pay for it using the test payment method. And keep in mind that at this point, the webhooks have not been set up completely. Once I pay, you can see that the payment is successful and a subscription is already created under subscriptions section. In order to enable users to change the subscription, we can go to customer portal and enable users to cancel subscription and also upgrade subscription from basic to pro plan. And once done, we can copy the link and paste the link as a billing portal for our users. When our users click on the billing link, we forward them to a portal where they have to enter the emails. And once they do, they will receive an email link with which they can access their customer portal, where they can update, cancel, or renew their plans. You can see all the events that got fired when we created the subscription and also updated it inside the developer section under events. Now it's time for us to build webhooks and handle all the events that we care about. I'm going to create a webhook and add my API route endpoint and also add all the events that we talked about. Once done, if I go back and update my subscription, you can see that the event is reaching my webhook. Now it's time for us to handle all the events. When the webhook is created, I want to get the subscription status and update the status in my database based on the customer email. Plus, I want to update the plan that they're on. For that, we're going to build a helper function called retrieve subscription and pass the Stripe event. And in that, I will call the subscriptions retrieve API and also expand the customer field. Then we're going to create a get customer email that will get us back the email from the subscription objects and throw an error if no email is found. Then we will create another function to get the current plan from the subscription's price ID. If the price ID is not known, then we will throw an error. Now that we have the customer email, subscription, and current plan, it's time for us to update our database with these values. For that, I'm going to create yet another function to update subscribed user on subscribed user table. At the time we update the table, we also check if the user has canceled the subscription already at the end of the cycle and update the next invoice date based on that. Once done, we will also record the subscription event in our database, if in case we need to access this information in the future. And this function is a simple insert of the event information along with the email in the events table. And you can see that I have a small array called updates array. And I just push some of the logs inside this updates array so that it's easy for us to track this in our Stripe dashboard. First, we're going to handle the subscription created event and try and update our database when this event reaches our endpoint. And we will also need to put this inside a try-catch block because we throw errors inside our helper functions. Inside handle errors, we will push the errors inside the errors array and return the next response with the status code 500. If there are no errors, then we return a normal 200 response with the updates and non-blocking errors. Now that we have all the helper functions that we need, let's try and assemble them inside the handle subscription created method. So we're simply going to get all the information from the helpers and pass them on to update subscribed user method and also record the event. In the meantime, I also push the logs inside the updates array. Now we're going to delete all our existing subscriptions and try to create a new subscription through payment links and see if this works. All right, this is working. And our subscribed user is updated with all the values we need. So now we're going to come back to our app and handle other events. The next event we're going to handle is Invoice Paid event. In this event, we will get invoice information and customer email information and update the invoice status to be paid whenever we receive this event. For this, I'm going to create a simple update invoice status helper and use it here inside handle invoice paid function. And we're also going to add a small function to get the customer email from the invoice object. And also record this event and push the logs inside the updates array. Then we have the case of invoice payment failed, where we do the same, but instead of paid, we just use unpaid. And subscription updated handler that looks very similar to subscription created handler. And we also have a subscription deleted handler in order to reset all the values. Now that looks good, and we're going to test for all the use cases we talked about. First, we will create plans for both users, one basic, another one pro, and see if it's working. All right, so they seem to be working great. And now let's cancel the plan for the basic user through the customer portal and check if it's working. All right, it's working. Now let's try to renew the plan to see if it's working. And it's working. And let's update the plan from basic to pro and see if it works. All right, before we go and test the plan upgrade from basic to pro, we need to go to the customer portal and ensure that the upgrade has the right price ID. That means the price ID for the upgrade should be the price ID of the pro plan. All right, That looks good. Now let's go ahead and test it. And it's working. And finally, let's delete the subscription from the Stripe dashboard and see if it's working. And it is working. Now, the invoice payment failed event is hard to simulate with regards to payment links, because when you enter a wrong card number, your payment will not be completed in the first place. So in such cases, I would highly recommend you to add a local listener on your webhooks dashboard and try to simulate this event. And that's pretty much it. Our code base works, and I will add this link to the code base in the description. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching. If you like the content, please leave a like and subscribe for more, and I will talk to you soon.